Hello there. You're listening to TALRadio, powered by Touch a Life Foundation. Welcome to Foodology. I'm radio host Devansh, and I talk about the enormous world of a little word called food. World-class skiing, decadent European-style cuisine, ornamental cathedrals, sweets glazed in maple syrup, peaceful island life. Canada is a patchwork of thriving cities and majestic wilderness. Montreal beckons travels with French charm and booming cultural landscape. In Toronto, the Art Gallery of Ontario is a vision. The gleaming mountain ranges of Banff set a stunning backdrop for an exploration of the Canadian Rockies. Canada, home to the maple syrup, is the second largest country in the world, with more than 2 million lakes. Despite Canada's great size, it is one of the world's most sparsely populated countries. Canada is also one of the most beautiful countries in the world, full of aesthetic forests, mountains, and lakes that make it a fantastic place for camping, hiking, or just wandering around and admiring. In a broader sense, Canadian culture is a mixture of British, French, and American influences, all of which blend and sometimes compete in every aspect of cultural life, from filmmaking and writing to cooking and playing sports. Because Canada is so diverse historically and ethnically, there is no single natural culture. It is a melting pot of the neighboring United States and borrowed influences from Europe. Despite its rich culture, the country has a long and complex history of colonialism. Canada is officially bilingual in English and French, reflecting the country's history as ground once contested by two Europe's greatest powers. The first people in Canada crossed the Bering Straits from Asia more than 10,000 years ago. In the north, the Inuit lived by hunting seals, walruses, and whales. On the west coast, people hunted deers, bears, and beavers. They also fished. On the plains, people lived by hunting buffalo. In the east, people grew crops of beans, squash, maize, and sunflower seeds. Thousands of years before any Europeans arrived, there were still people living in Canada. Canadian Aboriginals, also known as Native Canadians, the First Nations of Canada, Indigenous Canadians, or Canadian Indians. They are the descendants of the first humans inhabiting North America. The first Europeans to reach Canada were the Vikings. Their arrival is described in Icelandic sagas and confirmed by archaeological discoveries. In 1497, the English king Henry VII sent an Italian named Jean Cabot on an expedition across the Atlantic to Newfoundland. Cabot discovered rich fishing waters off the coast of Canada. Then, in 1534 and 1535, a Frenchman named Jacques Cartier sailed on two expeditions to Canada. In the early 17th century, French missionaries attempted to convert the natives of Canada to Christianity, without much success. Meanwhile, the French settlers traded with the natives for furs and farmed the land. Unfortunately, they also brought European diseases like smallpox, to which the natives had no resistance. These and many other voyages to the Canadian coast were in search of a northwest passage to Asia. And eventually, the French and English rivalry dominated Canada until 1763. When Europeans first arrived in eastern North America, missionaries were dispatched to convert the natives to Christianity. Early French and British colonists saw them as a useful and easy exploited source of cheap labor for the fur trade. Canada is a country of provinces and regions, and even nations that don't always share the same culinary traditions or experiences. But It's the stories of these different people and their food that make up the collective history of this beautiful country. Food and other customs in Canada still carry hints of the colonial influences of England and France. Food and other customs in Canada still carry the hints of colonial influences of England and France. Canadians speak English, except in Quebec, where the language is French, reflecting the influence of French settlers. But there are other regional differences in food and customs as well. Food in the provinces of Eastern Canada show signs of English heritage. Except, yes, obviously in Quebec, where the influence is completely French. In the provinces of Western Canada, the cuisine reflects explorers and settlers who, like their southern neighbors in the United States, made simple, hearty meals from available ingredients. In northern Canada, Northwest and Yukon, the diet is limited by short growing season, dominated by preserved food ingredients, and influenced by the native Inuit diet. And finally, along the west coast in British Columbia, immigrants from Asian nations influence food and cultural practices. Here are some of the classic dishes which are synonymous with the maple capital of the world. Bannock. Bannock is a variety of flat quick bread or any large round article baked or cooked from grain. A bannock is usually cut into sections before serving. Bannock is a form of bread that served as a staple in the diets of early settlers and fur traders. It took the form of a flat round cake or a pancake. Most indigenous nations in North America have some version of bannock. Many people associate this bread with the Scottish, but the Native American communities of Canada have their own version of bannocks. Some say that Scottish fur traders introduced this bread to the ancient communities in Canada. However, the truth is that the ancient people were eating bannocks long before the Scottish arrived. However, it was the Scottish fur traders that introduced the natives to flour, and the Canadian recipe was then adjusted. The main difference between a Canadian and Scottish bannocks is that the Scottish version uses oatmeal, while the Canadian version uses flour. The traditional Canadian version was made with cornmeal and kind of a flour made from grounded turnip pulps. However, after their introduction to wheat flour, the Canadian recipe was changed. Poutine. Poutine is a wonderful and delicious concoction of fries, gravy, and cheese curds. It is one of the most quintessential Canadian dishes. Real cheese curds are what makes poutine authentic. But you may ask, what are cheese curds? Cheese curds are simply solid pieces of curdled milk that can either be eaten alone or as a snack. Or in Canada, they are added to fries and gravy to make poutine. Legend has it that poutine was first put together in the 1950s. Several towns claim to be the birthplace of this beloved Canadian snack. The most popular version of this story is in Warwick in 1957. The story is that at the request of a truck driver who wanted something hot on the go, Fernand Lachance combined French fries and cheese curds and proclaimed "Ça va faire un maudit poutine." Or if I translate this into English, it would be "It will make a damn mess." One thing is no doubt, poutine comes from Quebec. The warming nature of poutine is perfect for the chilly winters that hits this province. Butter tarts. A butter tart is a small pastry tart filled with a delicious, gooey semi-solid syrup made of butter, sugar, and eggs. Often dry fruits or nuts are added to this filling. The exact origins of this iconic tart is unknown. Some credit this to the Filles du Roi, the young French women who were sent from France to settle in Quebec between 1663 and 1673. They combined their knowledge of pastry with the ingredients available to them. Just like the Americans have their symbols and sayings, eagles, apple pies, bombs, and movie stars, Canadians have their butter tarts. Beaver tails. The beaver tail is a ball of wheat dough that's hand-stretched into a long flat oval, into a shape that's similar to a beaver's tail. It is then deep-fried in canola oil and served piping hot. The traditional version is sprinkled with a mix of sugar and cinnamon, but you can also slather this with toppings like chocolate, hazelnut spread, maple cream, crushed chocolate bars, basically anything. The origins of beaver tail lie in a small town of Killaloe, Ontario, located just outside of Ottawa. In 1978, residents Grant and Pam Hooker knew they had something special on their hands when their family recipe for deep-fried dough was a hit amongst locals. When the couple's daughter observed that the oblonged pastries looked like beaver tails, the light bulb went off. After all, beavers are Canada's national animals and even featured on the Canadian currency. The couple renamed their treats as beaver tails, and the rest is history. Over time, the popularity of these pastries spread across Ottawa and Eastern Canada. With the beaver tail's crisp yet chewy texture and donut-like flavor, word spread. For decades later, you can now find beaver tail kiosks and food trucks in more than 140 locations worldwide. Tourtière. Tourtière, also known as pork pie or meat pie, is a traditional French-Canadian pie enjoyed throughout Canada and New England. It is made from a combination of ground meat, onions, savory seasonings, and is baked in a traditional pie crust. It is an important part of the Christmas and New Year celebrations in Quebec, and especially for those of the French-Canadian ancestry. The tourtière dates back to when Quebec was a French settlement. This dish has become an important part of the French-Canadian culture and now is a tradition across the country. Flipper pie. Flipper pie is a traditional Canadian pie made with an unusual ingredient: seal flippers. It originated from Newfoundland and Labrador, where it has been prepared and consumed since a really long time. Most recipes call for flour-coated, pan-fried seal meat, which is then roasted with vegetables such as onions, potatoes, carrots, and turnips. The combination is baked in a pastry shell, and the pie is often served with Worcestershire sauce on the side. Interestingly, the practice of seal hunting and the preparation of this pie has been criticized by many animal rights activist groups. The Caesar cocktail. The Caesar, also known as Bloody Caesar, is considered Canada's national cocktail. The key ingredients are vodka, clam juice, tomato juice, spices, and Worcestershire sauce. It is typically served in a highball glass rimmed with celery salt and garnished with celery stalk, olives, and lime. Food and beverage worker Walter Schell invented the Caesar in Calgary, Alberta, in 1969. Since then, the drink's popularity and origin have made it a national cultural icon. Next, we have the split pea soup. Made with dried split peas and cooked up with flavorful smoky ham, split pea soup is warm, satisfying, and great for leftovers. Split peas are different from the regular peas that we use to make a variety of dishes. These are a specific kind of peas that are intended to be dried for a longer period of time. After removing the outer hull, these peas are split into half along their natural seam. Therefore, they are called split peas. Well, the roots of this soup can be traced back to the cargo carried by French explorer Samuel de Champlain, the founder of New French settlement. This soup origins are murky, but people believe that the recipe is a distant relative of the soup made aboard explorer Samuel's ships. On long journeys, the ships would be stocked with ingredients that were preserved for lengthy times, such as vinegar, honey, cheese, rice, legumes. And on that ship, this soup was prepared. Montreal bagels. As with the most ethnic foods, bagels are prepared differently from city to city, community to community. But there is something so special about Montreal bagels that even catch the eye of people who love New York style bagels. Montreal bagels are a different breed. They are chewy and tinged with a tantalizing sweetness. The real Montreal bagels are still baked in wood ovens, which give the bagels an irregular charred outer surface. These bagels also have a shine, with a gloss that comes from a short swim in honey or malt or even maple syrup. With no chemical additives or dough conditioners, these bagels stand out in taste and looks. The Hawaiian pizza. Yes, you heard it right. Hawaiian pizza. This pizza was actually invented in Canada, and there isn't any topic more controversial than pineapple on pizza. Hawaiian pizza is typically topped with tomato sauce, mozzarella cheese, sliced ham, and pineapple. Some people also sprinkle a little bit of cooked bacon. The combination of savory and fruity toppings smell delicious coming out of the oven. And they might even convert a few anti-pineapple family members into Hawaiian pizza lovers. Again, despite its name, Hawaiian pizza was not invented in Hawaii. A Greek-born Canadian named Sam created this pizza in his restaurant back in 1962 as a result of his experiences with sweet and savory flavors of Chinese cuisine. The name Hawaiian actually came from the brand of canned pineapples that were used to create the recipe. Even though this pizza wasn't a big hit right away, the flavor combination played on the popularity of all things Hawaiian and tiki culture in 1960s, and it soon became a local sensation. This unlikely flavor combination, which is hated by a lot of people worldwide, is popular and a favorite in many places around Canada and of course in Hawaii. If you enjoy sweet and savory flavor combinations, there are chances that you will enjoy the Hawaiian pizza. Nanaimo bars. They are popular Canadian confection. Basically a layered bar cookie that tastes very similar to rich, chocolatey, loaded fudge. They are named after the west coast city of Nanaimo, British Columbia, where it was popularized after the Second World War. Nanaimo bars consist of 3 layers: a cracker crumb, a chocolate base, custard filling icing, and then they are finished with a chocolate coating. The first known recipe for Nanaimo bars appeared in the 1952 Women's Auxiliary of the Nanaimo Hospital Cookbook, and it was initially called the chocolate squares. 1 year later, a similar recipe was published in Vancouver's Edith Adams Cookbook. These are an amazing treat for any time of the day and any time of the year. Canadian cuisine has a variety of ingredients and styles. This is because, in addition to its strong indigenous influence, the country has imported many dishes from the 2 countries that occupy its majority, France and England. Canadian food is actually very hard to pin down. It's best not to go after a single idea of what an authentic Canadian dining experience could be, but you should enjoy your journey, seek out local food, and I guarantee you that you will be happy with your Canadian culinary expedition. Thank you so much for sticking around with me on this episode of Foodology. I had an incredible time talking to you. This is radio host Devansh signing off. Hope you have a great day ahead. See you soon.